wrong.
Welcome to the Amrit Mahotsav, 75 years of India's independence. We have Julio Ribeiro. I mean, the great Padmabhushan Julio Ribeiro with us. How proud a moment it is for the entire country to welcome such a great human being. Sir, can you hear me clearly? You can hear me?
Thank you, yeah.
Okay. So this is a pleasure because I can express my happiness. My happiness knows no bounds today to welcome a man who is 93 and who has led India to, many victories over unprecedented and uncharted territories of terror and law and order incumbencies and exigencies. Julio Ribeiro, former police commissioner of Mumbai, the ex-DG of CRPF, ex-Director General Police of Gujarat, and the man who curbed the Punjab Terror and nipped it in its bud. He is somebody who is credited with many such great initiatives as an IPS officer of the 1953 batch. Amrit Mahotsav is 35 years of India's independence. Who better to speak about India, its law and order, terrorism issues, and his personal experience as such a great former civil servant, Padmabhushan, Sri Julio Ribeiro. Sir, it's over to you. We look forward to hearing this, and this shall be a repository of knowledge, not only for you, but also for the entire country and the world to be proud of in the years to come. Sir, over to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Goenka. You have, honored me with a lot of introduction. I can only say that I will talk from my experience. Till 1986, I had only dealt with normal policing, that is keeping order on the streets of the city, especially a big city like Mumbai, and dealing with its underworld, that is the crime part of it. Now these are two things that a normal police officer is supposed to be tackling every day. In 1986, I was the Special Secretary in the Ministry of Home of the Union government, and I was summoned to the Prime Minister's house. It was a Good Friday, I remember, the only day in the year when I do some fasting, and I was called out in the afternoon, and I got into my car and went to the Prime Minister's house, where there were 4 ministers, there were no bureaucrats. And that was something that I noticed. And the question was, would you please go to Punjab? Now, I never expected that because being in the ministry, and I thought that that was the end of my career. But I had no alternative but to go with the Prime Minister's request. And there was a special plane that was waiting. And I was just bundled into that plane with 2 ministers, Arun Nehru and the other, who was the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh and later became, he was the Commerce Minister of India. So, and I was taken, actually escorted by 2 ministers and placed before Mr. Barnala, who already knew about my arrival. And he straight away announced that I was going to be the new DGP there. So I told the Prime Minister that I knew nothing about terrorism. I'd never dealt with it earlier. But having gone to Punjab, I learned about it on the job. as well as I read a lot about it from experts who had written about it. And I even visited Northern Ireland much later, of course, and interacted with the police commissioner of Northern Ireland and with the army general there and the minister also in charge. So we discussed the, all the contours uh, uh, of terrorism. I found that it was more or less what was happening in our own country. The only difference being in Punjab that it was the numbers were much more as far as we were concerned. It was nearly 5 times more than the numbers that they were reporting. So I mentioned this to them and they said, well, your country is much more than 5 times bigger. So naturally the figures will be bigger. And that is how they explained it. But all the contours were the same. You see, uh, terrorism and terrorists operate outside the law. You may say that the underworld also operates against the law. It's against the law, but they they accept the law. The terrorists do not accept the law at all. And they think they are beyond it. They don't believe in the state's authority at all. And whereas the underworld bribes the police officers, the politicians, and everybody concerned, the terrorist just puts a bullet through them, whoever they may be. They are not bothered about who you are. So this was the one major difference between what I had encountered in my days in Mumbai and in Maharashtra, in Gujarat. And here I find that this was quite a different kettle of fish. Now, it is a low-cost war, as the experts say. Low cost because they are not in a position to take up arms against the mighty state. And everywhere you will find that the terrorists are the weaker party. And nowhere has it in the world has terrorism profited or won. It has always lost. You can see the history of all the terrorist campaigns, particularly the biggest one in Northern Ireland, when the terrorists never came out on top. So it has not succeeded anywhere. Now, the terrorists rely on their community people inside the country where they are operating. For example, the terrorists in Northern Ireland belonged to the Catholic community, and they were the ones who took up arms, and they could not fight the mighty state of the United Kingdom. So they resorted to this underhand means of killing innocent people and causing terror. That is why the word comes. They cause terror by killing innocent people. Now, you know there are insurgencies. There are insurgencies in the Northeast. We've been having them for a very long time. But the insurgents never attack civilians. They don't attack unarmed people. They only attack the security forces, either the army or the semi-paramilitary or the police. And they kill those who are armed like themselves. So these are another difference. And they rely on the local people of their community for the oxygen that they require to succeed or to continue their activities. In Punjab, for instance, most of the terrorists belong to the Jat Sikh community, and they relied on that community for all their wants, like they require shelter, they required arms, and they required safe hideouts. All that was supplied to them by the local people. And it is only the local people who can help you to surmount these obstacles and get the better of the terrorists. But the local people will not help you because they feel that these boys are not working, not um, fighting for themselves, but for the qawm, for the community. And so they always will favor the boys till such time as they decide that they have had enough. And you will, the classical form of fighting terrorism of this sort, this is the nationalist form of terrorism. There is also another form called the intellectual form, or whatever you call it, the one that is confined mainly to the intellectuals, the professors, and the students in the universities. And you will find that they are mostly leftist oriented. And you had the Brigadisti Rosa in Italy. You had the Beider-Meinhof gang in Germany, and they operated on their own, and it was easier to tackle them because most people were not interested in their politics. So, whereas the nationalist form is very difficult to exterminate. This is what we have seen. And how did this form of terrorism get abated in Punjab? It is only after Mr. Gills, he was my assistant, my deputy, as you know, and all this was done by him, the operations, because he was the best operational man I ever worked with. And he understood the psyche of the Jat Sikh, and he worked on that psyche, and he got rid of quite a number of them, because these brainwashed terrorists, there's no other way of tackling them. You have to meet them head on, because they don't change, and they are brainwashed, and they don't mind laying down their lives. It is your life or theirs. So, in fact, I remember the policemen and the officers, when I first went there, said that it was not possible for them to go out on patrol at night because, when they go out, they see people in plain clothes, and they think that these are the villagers who are patrolling their fields, or they are looking after their fields. But suddenly they turn on you and open fire on you because they are terrorists, and they have seen someone in uniform who represent the state, and they don't like anyone who belongs to the state. So they said they cannot operate in uniform at night. So I had to even concede that facility and allow them to operate in plain clothes, so that the terrorists will not know at once that this is a policeman. So these are things that have to be done, and it was done. And finally, when they found that they were being given up by the local people, when local people found their own community people that they had enough, and that they were being troubled by the police as well as by the terrorists, they decided to give up the terrorists. And that is how we won them over. Of course, in a negative way, but there it was. We tried to win them over in other ways by going and addressing them, and the other demands that they were making for territorial demand, that was of course impossible to concede, and that was clear. We could not even talk about it. So, and most of the people in the community were not interested in the territorial demand. They were quite happy as far as their citizenship was concerned, and that was a great advantage to us. But otherwise, any kind of injustice that the police meted out, which was based mainly on corruption, that was something that went against us, and the leadership had to be very careful about this and ensure that their men did not cross limits. So that was a difficult proposition, because the system of policing in Punjab is little more masculine, shall I use the word, that it is quite different from, say, what I had seen in Western India, in Gujarat and Maharashtra, where people are much more, they do things in a more quiet way than to go using violence in the extreme form. So we had these various considerations, but the main methods that they employed was to strike at innocent people to cause terror, and they would strike when you least expect it. For example, when I went there, I saw that the first case I had was that they struck at a Hindu Jagran, near the temple where they were singing all the bhajans. They suddenly pounced from them and shot the men. They, there was a code of conduct among these terrorists. They normally did not touch women. They went after the males, and then anyone who didn't have a beard and and a kada and that kind of thing was targeted.
But sir, you said that they did not attack innocent people. They only attacked armed people. Then why did they?
Well, no, you have got it wrong. Innocent people mean they were all innocent. They were all. The only thing is they were not Sikhs. They were taken apart and shot, and so they were not. So they used to get frightened. That is how terror was caused, because but they did not kill, as far as possible, women. Women were killed only if they clung to their men. There were many cases where the women clung to their men and they were shot along with the men. But otherwise, generally they would separate them, and they would separate the Sikhs who are present there, and who were dressed as Sikhs rather. They could have been Sikhs who had shaved and who did not wear beards and turbans. So those were, of course, counted as Hindus and shot. So this was what they used to do. They used to take out people also from buses, and later even from trains. In a couple of cases, they did it on the railway line and took out people traveling by train. So these are their methods to cause terror. And the people who were chosen were all innocent people, really innocent, and that is why the terror was caused. If they had chosen people who were armed like themselves, like the police, it was a fair fight, shall we say, and that is how I would look at it, because they were fighting a war actually, but their war was a low-cost war where you didn't require tanks and aircraft, and you didn't need aircraft carriers and warships, but you just needed weapons, and particularly area weapons like the AK-47, which would fire in an arc and kill as many people as possible. So this was what they used to do. A lot of these arms came from across the border, and they found their way from the Afghan war, where the Russian arms as well as the American arms were finally brought into Punjab, brought into our Punjab through their Punjab and through the borders. So that was done by many of these smugglers, and the BSF used to be very vigilant on the borders. That is their job, to guard the borders. So this was how but the hearts and minds of the people, which in a classical form of terrorism you have to win over, those were won over, but unfortunately by negative means, by a little bit of which was done on the because making the community fed up of what was going on. So this was, I would say, not the classical form of winning over hearts and minds by getting the people to side with you against the terrorists. That did not happen, but they finally sided with you because of their own disgust with what was happening. So once the terrorists embedded in the communities were handed over to the police, this terrorism was put an end to. I'm told now there are some attempts to revive, but they have to be very careful how they deal with different problems, political problems, because if they are a little lax about it or they cause any kind of injustice or what people feel is unjust, then you have a problem. And that gives the impetus for the revival of such movements like terrorism signifies.
Sir, if I may just quickly, just intervene a little. Do you think the current farmers' agitation, because you are a very well updated man, I am told, the current farmers' agitation over the last 2 years, the farmer bills, these are issues which basically act as catalyst towards such insurgencies or terrorism activities to flare up in years to come?
Yes, it can. And political parties take advantage of it. They do it for their own purpose of getting power, of putting down the government of the day and gaining power in that manner. But that is a very short-term view of the matter. And that is something which the government of the day should be very careful about as to how they deal with such matters. Because if the general population gets the feeling that the government is unjust or is not dealing with them in a fair manner, then you get movements like terrorism, which, today you have a lot of pro-Khalistani elements, for instance, who are based not in India, because there is no Khalistan demand here, but the demand is from the expatriates who are living in much better luxury than what people here are living in. And yet they feel in a way a little guilty, and they keep, fomenting trouble over here or talking about it. And they have Sikhs for justice and that kind of as if justice has ever been denied to them. I personally have not seen any injustice being done to them. And in fact, they are the most honorable citizens and the most useful in many ways. They are the best agriculturists, best farmers, then they were the best motor in the motor trade in various ways. They are in the army, in the armed forces. I mean, the Sikhs they have contributed to this country in a very big manner. And they are certainly a community that needs to be given particular encomiums and lifted to certain heights, because people like to be, and to be appreciated for what they are doing, and appreciation has to be shown to them. So these are different
So do you think
methods
that
by
the
which
Punjab terror, because the Harmandir Sahib incident, the Golden Temple issue, all
Pardon?
these things, the Punjab terror, the Golden Temple, Punjab terror issue. I'm asking, do you think that the Punjab terror issue would have been well tackled, or what role did the army play, according to you, in tackling the Punjab terror?
I don't think we, at least in the 3.5 years I was there, I don't think we brought in the army in any major manner. They were not on the ground, but they were in their own barracks, and we informed the generals as to what was happening. We kept them posted, and they would sometimes very casually visit us and we would visit them. But I don't think that we used them in any manner at least in the 3.5 years I was there. And I don't think also later they were used like they are being used in J&K, for instance. There they are on the front. They are actually involved in the fight against terrorism, but not here, not in Punjab. But they kept themselves informed in case of necessity. It was not advisable to involve the army in this because, you know, the army has got its main job of defending our external borders. And the people should always be with them. You should be, they should be, and the people should be in a most friendly situation at all times. And if they take part in a thing like this, they will become unpopular, which is not good for a border state like Punjab. So we did not really employ army units or get them on the ground. There were no boots on the ground. Yeah.
I think that is one reason why there is so much of, you know, anti-India rhetoric which is played in the name of army when it comes to the state of Jammu and Kashmir.
Yeah. Well, I'm not competent to speak about Jammu and Kashmir because I did not go there, though I was asked to. I was asked to go there as governor. So I said, as governor, I can't. I'll only be a big sahib in the Raj Bhavan. So that is not the type of job that I like. So thank you so much.
How do you draw? You were also DG CRPF and you handled terrorism in Punjab. So as a DG of CRPF, how do you draw an analogy between the Naxals and the terrorists?
I was there only for 5 weeks, you know, as DG CRPF, 5 or 6 weeks at the most, because I was very happy to go back. I was 6 years in the CRPF as a DIG and also at their headquarters. But as the DG of the force, after I was appointed, I was suddenly called off one day again by the Prime Minister and asked to go to Gujarat, where there was the army had been out for 5 months on the roads, and the general was very, very worried about the utility of those 5 battalions of his that were being used. And he said that he would require 5 months for each month, that 1 month for each month that they were deployed on the ground, because now they were useless for battle. So we had to get them off relieve them. And that is why the government said I should go. The Prime Minister said I should go. Well, I said, it is not easy. It's not difficult to tackle communal situations. You have to just find out who are the mischief makers on both sides and put them in. And I said nobody should interfere in that. And he gave me that promise. And so it was fulfilled. And the thing was sorted out, I think, within 10 or 15 days at the most. But I continued there for 4 months, much longer than I was the CRPF, unfortunately. Yeah.
When the Prime Minister chose you when the Prime Minister chose you for the Punjab job, didn't you really think or ask him as to what made him pull you out of Maharashtra and send you to Punjab, you know, especially, you know, during those testing times? And I'm sure the gentleman with you, Mr. Arjun Singh and Mr. Arun Nehru, must have played a very important role in that decision.
Yeah.
I think it was Arjun Singh along with Mr. Nehru.
Arjun Singh, yeah.
Am I right?
It was
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So now what were the role that these two gentlemen played? Because Mr. Arun Nehru's name crops up pretty strongly when it comes to the Punjab issue.
What was the role that he played?
Yeah, in the decision of you being chosen and being sent to Punjab.
Oh, you know, before this, before I was sent, before I was asked to go there, the director of the intelligence bureau, who was my batchmate, Mr. Hariananda Barodi, and I were commissioned by the Home Minister to choose a good person to go as DG of Punjab, because the state had decided to replace their DG. So Barodi and I, we burnt the midnight oil and we went through everybody's record and we learnt about them, asked about them. Finally, we asked so many people whether they would go, and everybody turned it down in a moment. So that is why we had finally, they said, all right, you go. Now that is how it happened. So nobody was willing to go to Punjab. That was unfortunate. I know that Mr. Nehru got very angry with some of them who had turned it down and said they should not be brought to the center again. So that was how it all happened. Yeah.
From your days to 2611, there was quite a role reversal from your days as the police commissioner of Mumbai to 26/11/2008. Yeah. There was when people like Mr. Maria and the gentleman, Mr. Islam, what his name was, during the 26/11 attack were there. There has been quite a role reversal in terms of the important role played by the Maharashtra or the Mumbai Police. Because in your case, you were the DGP of Punjab and you curbed terrorism. In the case of 26/11, NSG had to be brought in, and they had to finally, control the entire thing when there were a lot of group of supported by the media as far as the Mumbai Police is concerned. Now, what do you think are the areas of improvement for the police forces of sensitive cities like Mumbai?
You see, the police, what we are talking of reforms, is basically the depoliticization of police. Today, the police is totally politicized. Whichever party is in power misuses the police. And that this hold of the political class over the law and order machinery is something that is working to the detriment of the security climate in this country. Now you see what is happening in Mumbai at present. It's terrible. There is a government of 3 parties and they control the local police and get action taken against their opponents. And the opponents, which is in power in the center, uses all the big central agencies to take to go after the people who belong to these 3 parties in power in Maharashtra. And it is going on every day. I don't know how anybody gains from it, except that they titillate their own. They get very happy when they do something like that to their opponent, but it doesn't help anyone, and it only puts the clock back in many ways. And this is happening here, and people are quite disgusted.
You got the Padmabhushan in 1987, if I remember.
Yes.
It was immediately after, I think, you went to Punjab.
Huh?
Was it immediately after you went to Punjab?
Yes, I went in 86. So I got it, immediately afterwards. Yeah.
Immediately after that, you got the Padmabhushan. So were you also surprised at having been bestowed with such a great award immediately in a year's time of your being posted at such a sensitive location? Or was it a political reward?
Well, I certainly
was it a political reward by the Prime Minister for what you had done?
Well, for coming there itself, I suppose putting your life in jeopardy, that is why they must have done that. I mean, but going there itself, and nobody was willing to go. That was perhaps what influenced him. Yeah, but we never thought about it. I never thought about it.
No, we must be complimenting the government of the day. We should compliment the government of the day, I feel, as a very layman, that for an officer of the IPS to take such a big step and accept such a big risk, it is befitting that such rewards are bestowed on such great officers like you, so that in the future, people can take up such dangerous assignments for the country's betterment and sake.
That's not for me to say. I mean, you shouldn't pat yourself on the back. Let others pat you. Yeah.
Okay. Now you said that you didn't want to take up the role of the governor of J&K, but you took up the role of the ambassador of Romania.
Well, J&K came much later. It was Mr. The Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee who asked me, whereas the one there was the one ambassador was done by Rahul Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi. Yeah. And the ambassador, I was not really interested.
But what were your learnings as from an IPS officer handling Punjab Terror to being an ambassador handling external issues as an ambassador in Romania? Was it not a very, very big change?
Well, it was like basically, I don't think there was much work to do because Romania was not on the radar of the Indian government. So, and there was a person like Ceausescu who was there at that time. Of course, he was sent to the other world very soon after that. But it was more of a learning experience of something else. And then I did travel around quite a bit in Eastern Europe. And that was perhaps a chance I would never have got otherwise. Good to learn about other countries, how they do, what they do, how they think, it's all that.
So from a police, you were the police commissioner of Mumbai and you saw the heydays of the underworld. You've been through the heydays of the underworld and you know it by the back of the hand. You were there when people like Mr. Karim Lala, Haji Mastan and Mudgaliyar were ruling the city much before Dawood Ibrahim stepped in. So your experience handling the underworld.
You see, the first three names you gave were there. There's no doubt about it. And we went after them. There's no doubt about that also. You know, what happens with the underworld, it's all based on money. And so the politician, police, and criminal nexus is what makes these things tick. So if you cut off one arm of it, it reduces. I cannot do anything about politicians. I can't do anything about, but I can do for the criminals. And I certainly can do it for the police. So what I did was just weaken the arm of the third arm, that is the police arm, and ensure that they didn't get too close to this underworld. And you talked about Dawood Ibrahim. Dawood Ibrahim was a very minor operative when I first when I took over as commissioner in Mumbai. He had been sentenced to jail for robbery, and he went in appeal, and he was granted bail, and he disappeared, and then he became very important. But that was that. But he did not operate in my time in Mumbai, because first of all he was in jail when I reached there, and later on he disappeared after he got bail from the court.
The film industry, the Bollywood and Underworld.
The three were there, and I think of them further on people. Yeah. Pardon?
Sorry.
Bollywood and Underworld.
Yeah.
Well, Bollywood requires money for its cash money. So that was the part where the Underworld came in. But I think that if there were more thought by the finance people on how the taxation should be done so that the people who want to make films could get the finances, I think that could be solved. It was more a problem of financing. Yeah.
You know,
Otherwise,
Mumbai
should be bothered about the underworld.
You have been, very, very, no holds barred speaker on communal harmony issues.
Yes.
Mumbai has been witness to many unpleasant incidents of communal disharmony.
Pardon?
Mumbai has been witness to many unpleasant incidents of communal disharmony of national relevance, especially in the 90s.
Yeah.
Especially in the 90s. And that is when people say that people like Tiger Menon and Dawood Ibrahim, gathered their wings. So what led to such issues in a city as sensitive and as
you are talking about the 90s. Please remember, I was not there. I was in Romania. In fact, when the 92, 93 riots took place in Mumbai, I was in Romania. I only read about them in the newspapers. And only when I returned, I formed the Mohalla committees using my influence in the city to get the Muslims who were totally alienated. Because unless people are united, now, for example, the Bombay police was very badly handicapped. Many criminals, unfortunately, belong to the poorer classes, and the Muslims belong to that class. And we would not be able to solve so many cases if we did not get proper information from the localities. And their localities will give you information if you treat them with some respect and dignity. And if you just treat them as enemies, you're not going to get that information. So this was the big problem that the Bombay police was facing. And there was a gentleman called Satish Sani who was the commissioner, and he was a very, very wise officer, one of the wisest I have come across. And he understood all this very, very clearly. And he was very keen that the Mohalla committees should be established and that they should be effective. And in his time, they were very effective. And they continued to be with successive commissioners. Till now, recently, they have been telling me, though I'm now out of commission myself because of my advanced age, that they find that the hate and division has reached such a proportion that all their work has come to naught and they'll have to start from scratch. And I told them, please don't give up. We should not give up whatever happens. Because finally, the value of your work will be seen when all this hate and divisiveness, when people find that is the cause of disunity. And disunity means a security problem in the country. And this is, I'm surprised that is not understood. And it has to be understood very clearly.
Police reforms, before we are coming towards the fag end of the show now, because, I feel like going on and on with, because, getting an opportunity to speak. Before this, I had one show with Fagan Kulasteji, the Honorable Minister of State Steel, but this is an opportunity of a lifetime to talk to Julio Ribeiro. So anyways, sir, your suggestions for police reforms?
For what?
For police reforms in the country?
There's only one thing that the governments have to do. Only one thing, if they can do it, but they can't because they only want to misuse the police forces. They have to choose a man of total integrity, some competence, not fully competent, even if somebody extremely competent is not available, but I was not extremely competent, but you have to choose a person who is of total integrity and leave it to him to run the force. If you want to run it from Mantralaya, then that is going to be a disaster because you are not a professional and you don't know these people. They come to you because of Mashila, their patronage, and that is not going to help the people. If you are elected by the people, you should think of the people will the people benefit from this kind of administration, where policemen and police officers are chosen on the basis of money changing hands? I mean, this is ridiculous, and that is what is happening. So the main thing is to choose good leaders, because everything depends on leadership, and the leader must be totally honest and person of integrity, so that he is respected by his people and they will listen to him. Because if they know that he himself is not, then the only thing they do is they also indulge in corruption. So and then the people suffer. So I think that what is happening today is that the police is totally under the subservience of the political class. It is not rule of law. It is the rule of the political party in power. The law becomes what they say. How can that be? It has to be what is enacted by them only. What they enact in the assembly, they are not bothered about that. I remember, I mean, as commissioner of police, one of these MLAs asking me when I'm going to stop raiding or dismantling the liquor business. So I said, that is you all have made the laws. You change the law and I'll allow them. But he says, how can we allow them? But then officially, but he wants them allowed unofficially. That I was not prepared to do. Because why should I take the blame for something which he is asking me to do? I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Your experience of the difference in style of leadership between the different prime ministers you've witnessed as a police officer and otherwise?
Well, what I read in the papers, I've not worked with them personally in any close contact. The closest I worked with the Prime Minister was Rajiv Gandhi because of the Punjab issue, not because of anything else. And Punjab issues, the governor and I would go every week to give him a report. We used to go in the government plane and come back. And that is all we used to, that is how we used to keep him informed about what is happening. If he was not around, then we used to brief Mr. Chidambaram. So but otherwise, I have not worked with any prime minister at that level, very closely.
I think it's befitting to end the show on this note, because the Julio Ribeiro, I think it's befitting to end the show on this note, because Rajiv Gandhi's name, that May 21st is the Anti-Terror Day. And it is the day on which the former Prime Minister was assassinated. And on his name, the Anti-Terror Day has been, marked. We do, honor his assassinations, and we really remember him on the 21st of May. And here is Mr. Julio Ribeiro, somebody who worked with him so closely, and somebody who really wiped off terror. So befitting that we close the show today with Mr. Julio Ribeiro, sir. Sir, it is an opportunity of a lifetime that we shall remember. And I'm sure had Rajiv Gandhi been here, I would have requested him to join me as well. And this would have been a wonderful day today. But any which ways, look forward to meeting you again, sir. Jai Hind and Namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lala.